This morning, we're going to hear the story about a man who certainly began to pay close attention. It's about a man who became ill, and after this illness stripped him of his identity-creating roles, he asked what he was, who he was, without these defining identities. This person is James Vanderbeek, and let's listen to his words now.
I'm sorry, we're having some audio issues this morning. Sorry.
Or at least to define myself, which was never really all that fulfilling. And then I became a husband, and that was much better. And then I became a father, and that was the ultimate. I could define myself then as a loving,
Could we start it from the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah. With the sound?
supported the hardest year of my life, and I wanted to share something
I gave it to you.
that I wanted to do. When I was younger, I used to define myself as an actor, right? Which was never really all that fulfilling. And then I became a husband, and that was much better. And then I became a father, and that was the ultimate. I could define myself then as a loving, capable, strong, supportive husband, father, provider, steward of land for several people in one. And for a long time, that felt like a really good definition of the question: who am I? What am I? And then this year, I had to look my own mortality in the eye. I diagnosed him with death. And all of those definitions that I cared so deeply about were stripped from me. I was away for treatment, so I could no longer be a husband that was helpful to my wife. I could no longer be a father who could pick up his kids and put them to bed and be there for them. I could not be a provider because I wasn't working. I couldn't be a steward of the land because at times I was too weak to prune all trees during the window that you're supposed to prune. And so I was faced with the question: if I am just a too skinny, weak guy alone in an apartment with cancer, what am I? And I meditated, and the answer came through: I am worthy of God's love. Simply because I exist. And if I'm worthy of God's love, shouldn't I also be worthy of my own? And the same is true for you. And as I move through this healing portal toward recovery, I want to share it with you because I think that revelation that came to me was due in no small part to all the prayers and the love that have been directed toward me. So I offer that to you, however it sits in your conscience, however it resonates. Run with it. And if the word God trips you up, I certainly don't know. I can't even know what God is or explain God. My efforts to connect to God are an ongoing process that is a constant unfolding mystery to me. But if it's a trigger, it feels too religious, you can take the word God out, and your mantra can simply be: I am worthy of love. Because you are. Thank you for the love prayers, everyone. That was me.
That, my dear ones, is the story of someone paying close attention. It's a reminder that it's never too late for clarity. Sometimes what turns out himself a skinny, weak guy, and yet he becomes probably more solid than he was ever before in his life through the asking and answering of that question. We heard the same message in various spiritual writings. The weak become strong, the strong become weak. We heard it in our first reading where Jesus is talking about letting go of your life in order to gain it. I ran across something this past weekend from none other than a 4th grade art fair that also underscores this. You'll see it on the screen. I was exiting my world and entering the world. This item in a child's art show, like our reading, reflects irony. Certainly so for a dying person. How can you be entering the world if you're preparing to exit it? But it becomes less ironically clever and riddle-like when you recognize the truth in it, which James did. Isn't it interesting how recognition of these kinds of truths often become far more accessible when the rubber starts to hit the road? And it's because in those situations, the non-sustaining distractions start to fall away. And then you're left only with yourself and your circumstances and whatever it is and however it is that you find God. And when all of the other stuff fell away, as it was for James, these catchphrases, weak and strong, exiting and entering the world, saving your life or losing it, all of that starts to look remarkably less paradoxical and less whimsical. And it's because a transitioning is starting to happen. The lens that you look through is less of an earthly one and becoming more and more of a sacred one. And this sacred lens has an R trademark on it, uppercase R. The R stands for reality. One uses this lens when you become face to face with what's really, truly real. Whereas James said, when he became nose to nose with death. And when I first heard his words, gentle yet raw, simple but profound in their truth, I immediately thought to myself, why do so many of us wait so long? Why do life-altering circumstances have to befall us before we allow our life to be altered by what's actually real? And that which may have at first sounded like navel-gazing, kind of lofty religious stuff, that turns out to be one of the very few things that actually sustains us. Why does our existence frequently have to be on the line before we come to understand, or if we do understand it, before we make room for the actual DNA of our existence? Now let me be clear. I am in no way this morning being critical of James Vanderbeek. It appears that he was a good man who valued meaningful things in his life. And it took tremendous openness of spirit for him to have asked that question and received it in its fullness. So my commentary isn't about this man who so purely and generously shared the intimacies of his experience with us. No. My attention, as I'm paying attention to his wisdom, is on us. Each of us live our lives, almost all of us, busy lives, Our days filled with activity, family, friends, recreation, maybe a job, health pursuits, and all of these things color and fill our days, and that is okay. It's in our nature, but there's a bottom line that's imperative. The presence and prioritization of these activities and pursuits, and I mean even relationships too, they often ease us away from that bottom line that's underneath all of the rest of it, which is, and I've got this in bold print in my paper, so it's the bottom line here, that this reality about our worthiness and embodiment of divinity is bottom line real. And I know that doesn't sound sexy, kind of mundane, kind of anticlimactic, same old, but I guarantee you it wasn't to James, whose life is on the line now. Not at all. It was transformative for him as his rubber is hitting his road now. The word transformative makes me think about where we are now in Lent. It's the second Sunday. Does anyone know? I'll bet you Reverend Jim, some of the reverends sprinkled around these parts probably know that today is the Sunday of the Transfiguration. As story has it, Jesus went up on a mountaintop with some of his friends, and there he reveals his divine identity to them. And speaking of bottom lines, my friends, this is one of the bottom lines of Lent. But maybe it's not how we often hear it. I can imagine Jesus saying on that mountaintop, "Can you see now that divine love is in me and in you? And I want you to see that. I want to help you to come to that before my life ends." And I wonder, similarly, as James was being stripped of his life, knowing that his life was coming to an end, when he asked the same question, "Who am I?" the same message came that Jesus was probably saying on that mountaintop. It's about divine love in each of us. And I wonder if James, along with his gratitude, has any regret for not asking and having this question answered earlier in his life. Because it was a game changer, was it not? For him, a dying man. But here's a question for us. For you, for me, presumably not actively in the process of dying, is it as relevant to us as it became to James? Are we paying close enough attention to realize that the same message that he received is being whispered to each one of us, each day, each moment of our lives, while we are busy tending to other things? This brings to mind another story about the incorporation of love with the circumstances of death. My high school best buddy, Diana, like most of us, was busy tending to other things when a policeman arrived at her door to inform her that her 22-year-old daughter had been killed in an auto accident. She and her husband, Pat, were devastated. And I remember shortly afterwards, Pat saying to me, "Lori, make sure you hug your kids and tell them that you love them." sure you pay attention and tend to love. Tending to and paying attention to are the same side, two sides of the same coin, and we hear about this in a poem that I'm about to share with you, entitled The Tending, One Garden. This is from Rosemary Matilda Trummer. I'm no longer surprised when strange exotic blooms appear in my mind, knowing now how seeds arrive on the wind from everywhere. Now, I'm less likely to label something weed simply because I didn't plant it myself. At the same time, I do want to be discerning, knowing whatever I choose to grow might appear soon in the soil of you. And so I'm cautious when sowing bulbs of anger, saplings of judgment, thorns of certainty. I want us all to plant great beds of unanswerable questions and tend to the mystery together. What else might it change what these hands do when I trust that every choice matters? She wants to be discerning because what she sows and what each of us sow, what I sow, might end up on your soil and maybe even take root. This, my friends, brings us to question number 2. Question 1 is the when question. Are we going to wait until something life-threatening happens until we recognize and consciously live in to our divine love? That's question number 1. And question number 2 builds on that. It's the what question, not the when question. The what question is, what do we allow in our consciousness? And what then do we emit? Each of us is always putting something out there at all times. We can't help but do that. Our words, our actions, even our vibe affects the soil, mine and yours. These 2 imperatives might seem like a tall order, but really? And there's that real word again. It's the most simple thing you will ever do. It's simple because you're turning into something that's always been there. It doesn't have to be gained, it doesn't have to be achieved. The divine love that you have and are, it just is. The tall order became much shorter, did it not? Just recognize it and live it. Embrace what was always there. And then share it. And as debilitation and the possibility of death took hold, James Vanderbeek asked, who am I? What am I? The walls are closing in. Well, the walls probably aren't closing in the same way for most of us. But again, how relevant is the question to you? Nonetheless, what seeds are you sowing for your own and others' soil? Who are you? Who do you choose to be? What do you choose to have define your identity? As the poet says, every choice matters. What will your choice be? And when?